Welcome. My name is Ojiugo Uche, co-founder and CEO of Genti Audio, an audio platform focused on educational and entertaining audio content in African voices and languages. We have over 10,000 hours of content in 22 languages, and we've reached 1.5 million minutes of listens with 21,000 users. Here today, I am here to discuss promoting multilingual literacy for inclusive education, joined by Frank of TopSet and Michael of Nkenne. I'm going to let them introduce themselves as we then enter into a robust conversation on the topic.
Great. Thank you for that, Ojiugo. I'm Frank Akinwande Williams, co-founder and CEO of TopSet. At TopSet, we are essentially a platform that connects native speakers of African languages with learners all over the world. So essentially a one-stop shop for online African language learning.
And Michael, over to you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Michael Odokara-Okigbo. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Nkenne. Nkenne is the most downloaded African language learning platform in market. With over 150,000 users, we aim to be the dominant force in African language learning and African language AI translations.
Fantastic. Thank you for introducing yourselves. And in terms of this conversation, as I've mentioned, we are here to discuss, and really is a conversation, right? So discussing multilingual literacy for inclusive education. So I'm curious to hear from you guys why you think that is important, this topic.
I think it's incredibly important. I think, for me personally, I am Nigerian. I was born and raised in the UK. And as a British Nigerian, I felt kind of I didn't really belong in either culture, right? I wasn't fully British, I wasn't fully Nigerian. And one of the things that really helped me to ultimately connect with that sense of my culture, my ancestry, my identity was going down that journey of learning the language and reconnecting with family. And so now at TopSet, we've helped tens of thousands of people learn their native tongue. And, for our kids, one of the things I would say that's incredible about African language learning and language learning generally is that people go through this incredible journey of cognitive development, right? So they think faster, they think sharper, better memory. We become more empathetic as we learn additional languages because we are forced to kind of learn how to communicate and appreciate different cultures and everything else. But again, I think the unique, beautiful thing about our languages and our children learning our languages is, again, it's like them getting that sense of confidence, of identity, which then they take throughout their lives.
So for you, it's right for TopSet, it's really about connecting back to roots. And Michael, would you also agree? Because Nkenne is also language learning focused. Do you see it in a similar way? Would love to hear from you about that, the importance of multilingual literacy.
Yes, language is culture, and it's the recipe book to our heritage. So it's very important to learn our native languages and to also connect to people all over in the continent, all over Nigeria, all over the world, with our languages. At Nkenne, we aim to teach both the auditory learning version of it, so with just speaking, but also with the written as well and reading. With Nkenne, you can learn how to read, write, and speak in different African languages. And it's important to teach the writing as well, because even when I'm home in Nigeria, there's so many people who don't know how to write their native tongue. So it's important to have literacy and not just speaking, but also writing as well. And with Nkenne, we aim to do all of that.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I want to spend a bit of time, actually, if we will, on this topic. So for us at Genti Audio, we are audio focused. And as you mentioned, Michael, you focus on the audio because you have a sort of sometimes literacy deficit in people's local languages. And so that's where the audio comes in, but also still focusing on literacy. For us at Genti Audio, we see that our platform is really focused on also speakers, native speakers, first language speakers of these local languages. So I'll give you certain examples. A big part of our listenership is driven by our Hausa language content, right? And our Hausa language content, these are stories, audio stories that are listened to, that have themes, right? Or are pure entertainment, but are listened to by people whose first language is Hausa. And this is typically supported by a large existing literacy space in the language, right? There's a big sort of Kano literature market around that. And so for us, we almost enter from a different angle, maybe born from my experience, right? Where starting Genti was more from an experience teaching in Kebbi State, in a rural village in Kebbi, and seeing that you had students who were not able to learn properly because they were learning in language that was foreign to them, in this case, English. You know, we look at the educational policy, and it recommends initial learning in people's local languages. So it's almost like we are coming from a slightly different angle where it's for people who that's their first language. It's audio first, but can go very well together with read-along materials, written materials, first literacy. But I bring this up to sort of further ask, right, to both of you who are coming from it, who TopSet and Nkenne comes from it from a learning of local languages, mostly for cultural purposes. I wonder, you know, particularly from what you said, Michael, about what your vision or your personal experience, Frank, why learning the written version of those languages is also important from a cultural perspective, especially given that a lot of people typically engage with these languages in audio. So I'm curious to understand the why of that, if you would.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so I think for us at TopSet, the kind of like primary question that we ask before we put out any new feature or product is kind of like, what do our learners want and what problem do they have that we can help them to solve? And interestingly, funnily enough, actually, 95% of our learners are focused on the verbal communication, right? Why? Because they want to connect with their grandmothers and cousins and everything else. But what's interesting is you can't master the auditory side, or like the speaking and the listening side, without touching on and integrating the written, like the reading and the writing, into your learning. And so what we've ultimately found is that despite the fact that our focus very much is on conversational, contemporary Yoruba and Igbo, etc., it's crucial that we integrate the written language and the tone marks and everything else into what we do. One of the beautiful things about that, by the way, quickly, is that what we've also started seeing is some of our learners coming from the US, Canada, UK, back home to Nigeria to teach and to now engage in programs with rural communities, which of course they couldn't have done before without learning the language, including the written aspect of it. Final thing I'll say on the topic, though, is that the literacy and the writing piece is actually really important. Why? Because if you think about it over time, the written form of language and communication is one of the easiest and most kind of like comprehensive ways of storing language, culture, and our stories. And so I think for that reason alone, like there's no way that we can put it to one side entirely and just focus on the verbal conversation.
Okay, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I guess for me, one thing you said, which is, and I wonder, Michael, if that's the same for you, is that really that written supports also the auditory, right? Especially with the tonal marks and the learning. Is that also your experience, or maybe other reasons why the written is important from Nkenne?
Yes, Frank mentioned a lot of important qualities of why written is important, whether it's preservation of the language, whether it's education and literacy, and as well as economic opportunities, as well as many. Some of our users are aiming to teach back in their respective countries in Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya, etc. But like as you said, it allows for an elevation of understanding the language that you learn with writing. you are able to decipher tonal shifts a little better as well when it comes to a lot of our languages, because with a lot of our languages, there are one word in Yoruba or Igbo can mean 6 or 7 different things. So that can also help with the language retention. With our users as well, they're able to connect with each other. With Nkenne, we have our users practice with each other as well as means elevating themselves. And a lot of our users aim to practice with each other through the written form, not just oratory. A lot of our users can speak these languages, but are in needing help of the written. So they're able to practice in that way. So Frank mentioned a lot of the great qualities, but for us as well, what's important for us is the global connectivity where our users and people all over the world who are interested in learning African languages can connect through written form.
Awesome. Thanks for giving some of those specific examples. And I also think of, when you said can practice, right? I know flashcards, for example, that, are used in your systems, right? That support that you don't necessarily, well, I've not seen, maybe they exist, but audio flashcards, right? Where written flashcards are easier. I think for us at Genti Audio, we are audio focused, but it comes, as I mentioned, from a big part of the education angle, and what we really believe in based on my experience in Kebbi is really around enabling people to learn in the language of the environment. I always give the example of, can you imagine learning math in Italian or a language you don't understand? But in terms of literacy specifically, because again, we are audio, but it supports read-along materials. In terms of literacy, for us, what we see is that when someone can read in one language, and that is true, I would imagine for you guys as well, when you can read in one language, it's easier then to learn how to read in another language. So when someone can read in Hausa because they're learning the language of the environment, they can then read better in any other language that they decide. Similarly, right? You're not teaching Nkenne and TopSet users how to sound out A, B, right? Even if there might be slight differences, but you're not starting from that level of basics. So that's something very important too around learning in the language of one's environment. But now I want to push slightly to take a slight detour. We've already been talking about it, but here I want to dig a bit deeper into the technology of it. What is technology's role, right? What is technology's role in supporting multilingual literacy? We've started talking about it, but in this segment, I really want to hear a bit more about what we're doing at our various startups and what we're building. So maybe, Michael, we can start with you to tell a bit more about how technology is really supporting Nkenne's work here.
So we're in the 21st century, so technology is all throughout everything we do. Even currently, I'm across the pond, but I'm able to speak through technology to you all, which is an amazing blessing. So it's time for us to meet the moment, meet the time, and that is to provide opportunities for all learners all over the world to be connected to African languages. For Nkenne, we also view it as a preservation opportunity to preserve our languages and to protect our languages. When it comes to African languages, we have the most ancient languages in the world, the oldest languages in the world, and that is something to be prideful of. So we aim to protect, preserve, and to celebrate African languages, which are the root to all human languages, which is incredible. So utilizing technology to teach, to preserve, and to celebrate our languages, it was time. So I think it's just it's just us meeting the moment, meeting where we are currently with technology. It's imperative.
Yeah. I think also, Michael, you're doing some really cool stuff with AI and large language models, right? In like for our native languages too.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your question. What's your question, Frank?
I said you're also doing some really cool things with AI and large language models for African languages too.
Yes, we are creating the first multilingual African language translation database where it's tonally sensitive as well, which provides for a heightened accuracy with African languages.
Yeah, really cool. Really, really cool stuff. And yeah, I think one of the beautiful things about this EdTech ecosystem is that I've been blessed by is being able to meet so many really cool entrepreneurs who are truly innovative, right? And like Michael said, we are also at TopSet, a 21st century education company, EdTech company, and truly everything we do touches technology in one way or another. Our tutors are all based today in Nigeria before we extend to other languages and other countries. But over 90% of our learners are in the US, Canada, UK, and that wouldn't be possible without technology. For us, it's not just as simple as getting one native language speaker or tutor and then just grabbing a student and putting them together. There's actually quite a lot that goes into our AI matching system based on a whole lot of criteria that we found correlates with better retention and lesson rating scores, which essentially means that if you out there are considering learning one of our native languages, then the beautiful thing about coming to TopSet is that you will be matched with someone who is personalized for you and for your learning journey, which leads on to the next beautiful thing about technology today, and that's personalization, right? Today, data is gold, and the fact that we collect millions of data points about the lessons and what people are doing well in, what they're struggling with, and everything else has basically enabled us to put together this really cool curriculum across all of our languages that again is very tailored to the pace of how people learn, the style in which people learn, and everything else. I guess the final thing I'll mention in terms of AI, of technology and how we're leveraging technology at TopSet is in terms of our gamified language learning app, which basically ensures that in between your personalized lessons with the tutors, you have fun ways to learn the language. I remember years ago when I first started trying to learn Yoruba, after learning French, I speak French. And the cool thing about French and speaking Chinese at some point was that there were so many great games and apps and just quizzes and flashcards and songs and everything else. And so what's cool now is given where technology is today and the incredible team of devs that we have at TopSet, we've managed to build our own fun, engaging way to use Afro beats and virtual immersions and everything else and these flashcards and quizzes to create a truly fun, enjoyable journey for our kids and for our adult learners.
Awesome stuff. And also in terms of the matching, I actually went through the initial matching process for TopSet, right?
Really?
Yes, I did. So in terms of getting connected as well to someone that, well, not a tutor yet, but someone so I'm in the process, so someone who took information about my needs, etc. So I love that, just the different ways you both have outlined technology. Sharing a bit from my experience, I would say really a few things to highlight. Number one, right, in addition to what you guys have said, because yes, 21st century technology is king, technology is everywhere. But we see Genti Audio is, as its name suggests, audio. And the way we think about it, right, I know we're talking about multilingual literacy, and writing is a technology in many ways. It's a technology that enables you to store information, to store stories, right, for posterity and to transfer. Similarly, audio is a technology, and MP3 technology now enables people to have access to the voices saved. So for us, when we look at it in that way, right, is a continuation that is also enabling collection, right, and curation of large volumes of our African content, because a lot of our African languages are oral first, right, are really audio focused. So even as writing is important and that technology is being used to learn, the audio part also enables for curation of that content, right, across different communities, different generations, etc. So that's one, audio as a technology. The second one, which you mentioned as well, Frank, is in terms of personalization. So we are now working on a recommendation algorithm, right, that will help to suggest to people right? Based on what you've listened to, here are other things as well that you would find interesting. So that's the second one. And thirdly, very linked to the whole recommendation piece, is that through the technology of audio, the recommendation, you have situations where it's tailoring based on people's needs, right? So whether it is a person that is coming onto the platform primarily to learn, right? To learn whether edutainment or more foundational formal education in the language, in Pidgin, in English, in Hausa, or if it's someone who is looking for immersive content, immersive digital content to improve their local language knowledge, right? You have that information and you're being directed to those. So those are really some cool ways that technology, digging deeper into technology supporting. And in terms of still under this technology, right, we've talked about, right, the cool work that Nkenne is doing with the large language models, what TopSet is doing in terms of the engagement of your tutors and also connecting with folks. I'm curious to hear about, I know some of them, but to hear about the success stories, the impact stories of our startups.
Yeah, happy to go first. So I love the fact that at TopSet, we see impact on both sides of our marketplace, right? In terms of the learners going from not being able to, barely knowing what bawani means in Yoruba to actually being able to have full conversations with loved ones and family members. We've had certain spouses who are not Nigerian at all learn the language and surprise their husbands or surprise their in-laws with the language as well, which is incredible when you hear these stories. But one of the other things I love about this, about what we all do and what we do at TopSet in particular, is the teacher training aspect of it. So something that not everyone knows about TopSet is that 70% of our tutors have no teaching experience before TopSet. And around 75% don't have degrees in whatever language it is that they're teaching. But what we've done is we've put together this really cool, bespoke, and really effective training system and training program. My sister is bringing her knowledge from Oxford University, her master's in teacher education, and we're literally taking that beautiful brain of hers and applying it all to our tutors in our countries. And what that means is, on average, I think teacher salaries here are $70K, right? Which roughly $40, $50 a month. And what we've done, one thing I'm really proud of is that by just working, I think 15 hours part-time on the side, our tutors are able to increase their income from roughly 70, 80,000 naira to 500,000 naira. And then if you think about what a jump like that was at 7, 8x, what a jump like that means for not just the individual teacher, but for their kids and for their siblings and parents and for their communities. That is honestly what makes this journey worthwhile. I had a full head of hair before I started this founder journey, but it's worth it, right? Because we do affect real lives.
Awesome. So your lack of hair is because of TopSet.
Yeah.
Michael, I wonder if your greys are those greys I see? Are those because of Nkenne as well?
Probably. But it's all good though. Just to also reiterate what he said as well, it's been a highlight to see people elevate their language learning experiences. I'm also an Nkenne user. I use it for Igbo and Pidgin. But some personal stories that I've seen. Also, I will state this too, as the CEO, I meet with about 5 of our users per week just to see how we can best innovate and elevate the platform. We've been able to grow by talking with our users. Our users give us feedback. They have access in the app to give us feedback and to talk to our dev team, so we're able to learn what they want to elevate, what they want us to elevate the platform with. And one of our users, Truvano, he's Niger-based. He was born in Nigeria. He's using Nkenne to learn how to better songwrite in Yoruba. And we have access. Our premium users, who are paid users, have access to our tutors, who are professors in the particular countries they are teaching from. So he's able to get advice and notations on how to elevate his writing capacities in Yoruba from actual professors in these languages. So he's becoming a better songwriter. Also, we talked to a user earlier this week who was born in the United States, Trinidad heritage, Trinidad and Tobago, using Nkenne to learn Yoruba. And he goes to Nigerian restaurants all over Houston and orders his food in Yoruba. And he stated to us that he has a profound, he's very proud of himself that he's able to do it. He's been using our platform as gone through all our lessons. We're even creating more lessons in Yoruba so he can also participate and elevate his language learning experience. But just to see how these users are putting in hours and hours and hours, elevating themselves with our languages, it's very prideful.
100%. I mean, I can just imagine, right? I wonder if you guys are also going to maybe link the songs and have those songs as testimonials as well, because that's really beautiful to elevate one's sort of creative process through your app. So yeah, really,
That's
really
an amazing idea, actually. That's an amazing idea.
Yeah. And in terms of for us at Genti, just sharing some of our sort of successes as well and stories. For us, one thing that is very powerful is, as I mentioned, a lot of audio content on the continent in local languages are audio first, right? And you have a situation where there's there was a rich radio drama tradition in this country, right? In Pidgin, in English, in other languages. And we found that so many of these things were sitting in archives in radio stations. But we've been able to get a lot of this content through distribution agreements onto the Genti audio platform. And one amazing comment that we get repeatedly is, oh my God, this takes me back to my childhood. I've not heard Same Journey for so long. I've not heard Rainbow City. Oh, I didn't know I could listen to Story, offline. So that really, from the nostalgia perspective, is one that was a very early boost for us. But beyond that as well is bringing stories that resonate now, right? Stories that resonate now, bringing them into audio through collaboration with creators, right? So creators are able to tell their story in a different way, right? In audio format, as well as many of them have their written versions as well, and are able to share it with people who can listen on the go, right? When they are in places where they can't read. And I know one comment that made me chuckle with excitement was a user talking about how they hadn't watched TV in 3 weeks because they would just plug in their earphones and listen to 225 Katakata Street, all the time. So those are some stories just in terms of from the listener perspective, but then also on the converse, from the creator perspective, we now have a self-service portal that allows creators to upload their content themselves, that allows them to monetize their content, their audio content, their creative endeavors, and to be able to earn both, whether it's in Naira or in dollars. Right now, we accept those two forms, right? And that way gives an additional creative outlet and opportunity to earn. So those are some impact stories and impacts that we are having through technology related to multilingual literacy and the conversation we're having here. Now, of course, that's a hive, right? But the thing is that this journey is also tough. And we, for example, Genti, we also have our share of challenges as well in terms of whether it's getting the word out, whether it's also having situations where people that want this content are, don't have steady access to internet, right? Internet fluctuates, right? And we've had to innovate around some of these challenges even while we work on other of them, right? Whether it's making our app download forward so that people can download and listen offline, whether it's changing our payment structure away from subscription, away from subscription to a pay-as-you-listen model that allows for people to pay as they go, right? Or to watch ads to get a chance to listen. And this has improved revenues by up to 4 or 5x. So these are some challenges we have. There are others as well in terms of spreading the word that we continue to face. But anyway, I say that just to introduce then this question I have, right, of our challenges, your unique challenges, and how you're beginning to address them. Yeah.
Oh, wow. So, I mean, as a startup, there are always tons of challenges you have to mitigate, whether it is how to get more users and get more paying users, let's say security as well, hiring teammates. So there's so many different ways you can go about this. I'll go about this firstly on our users. We have our top user base currently for Nkenne is Nigeria. And one of their top complaints was that they couldn't download the lessons or listen to the lessons due to internet problems in the country. So we literally changed the way our audio formats. So users in Nigeria and all over the continent, if they are suffering from internet connectivity issues, they can download the lessons quicker. We changed from video lessons to audio lessons, which elevated our speed about 5 times what it was before. So we listen to our users. If they say they're having issues with certain things, we try to fix it as soon as possible. One of the things about also being a startup is that it's important to innovate as soon as possible as well. If there are things you can see that will allow for more users, especially more paying users, you have to innovate. You have to elevate because, of course, there's competition, but also you want to be in service of your users. And within Nkenne, the only reason we've been able to grow and elevate is from our users. So we give the utmost importance to making sure we can deliver our best to them.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, yeah, similarly, we spend so much time talking to our users and trying to understand what their problems are and how we can help to solve them. At TopSet, we're working towards providing dignified work for 100,000 Africans. Now, if you think about it, ultimately, these are language teachers, right? But in reality, what we found was that to teach at TopSet, you need to be able to build rapport and have empathy and connect with the learner. You need to know what student-centered learning is and be smart about pacing and all these things. Also, you need to have good internet and a laptop and all, right? And as I'm saying this, I'm sure you're thinking this is like narrowing the pool of potential talent and potential teachers. And so to kind of solve this problem, what we ended up doing was developing this teacher training program. And on the internet and device availability piece, we realized that it's not enough for each tutor to just have one router, or oftentimes a lot of them were using their phones to hotspot for internet. And so now we make sure that all of our tutors have one proper router, then a full proper backup. But then, as you can imagine, then it's a lot to expect tutors to fork out the money to pay this, especially when they're just about to start on TopSet. And so what we've been trialing is essentially like a pay small scheme where tutors get the devices and we pay it upfront, pay for it upfront. And then we deduct the amount gradually over a few months from their earnings. So far in this trial, we've had a 0% default rate. Why? Because we're providing real utility and economic value to the tutors. And so now we're talking to one of the biggest distributors of electronics across Africa for a partnership where they will essentially fund and distribute the electronics. So yeah, being a founder in anywhere in the world, especially in our beautiful country, is not without challenges. But with the challenges comes innovative solutions, and that's the fun of it.
100%. And across all our challenges, one thing that was common in addition to the others was infrastructure, right? Infrastructure, internet, and how Nkenne is solving that through, changing the mood of lessons, how we are solving that at Genti Audio by, really emphasizing and making downloading on the platform available, how you guys are solving that by also providing the infrastructure and allowing them to pay easily. I think for us, one thing about, just to add a bit to our challenge, so for us, in terms of that infrastructure piece and the download piece, there is a sort of a bit of a challenge because you also want to protect the intellectual property of the creators. And so you don't want a situation where people can download and start sharing on WhatsApp. But on the other hand, you also need a station where folks can download so that they can listen offline. And so that means that for us, we have to use digital right management that allows for both things to be true. So I just wanted to, touch on that briefly. But anyway, so this is great to hear, right? We're all facing challenges. That is the nature of this work, but finding ways through it. And as we then begin to wrap up the conversation, let's see. Well, as we begin to wrap up, I could keep discussing, but as we start to wrap up the conversation, I'm curious to hear from us, right? As part of this campaign, promoting multilingual literacy for inclusive education, what is your startup's pledge towards promoting this multilingual literacy and inclusive education in the future?
Yeah, so I think on our side, we focus, and the core part of our mission is igniting cultural pride, as well as the economic empowerment through African language learning. I mentioned the target of reaching 100,000, or creating 100,000 dignified jobs across the continent, and also to reach 1 million learners of our languages all over the world. That is entirely what myself and the team spend our waking days and nights thinking about and working towards. And naturally, the literacy piece is a core part of that, as we discussed earlier, with the importance of the reading and the writing as a complement to the conversational language learning as well. So we're very much focused on creating this better Nigeria, better Africa that I think we all are.
Fantastic. Michael?
Perfect. And for us at Nkenne, we have a few initiatives to push language literacy. Firstly, interactive language learning, whether it is for our tutors or with other users of Nkenne. Nkenne is a community-based learning platform. So once you join Nkenne, you are a part of a community. So we aim to enhance that community with opportunities of language learning. Cultural integrations is very important to us. We're the only platform that we know of that teaches languages as well as the culture of these languages. For instance, you can't learn Yoruba and then give something to someone with your left hand. Like, that doesn't make any sense to us. So we teach in the lessons cultural importances or integrations that we believe is important for our users to learn if they ever visit or participate or want to be a part in Nigeria or wherever in the continent of Africa. We also aim to continue to enhance our AI translation database. There are so many people all over the world in the continent that do not know how to write, listen, read, or all three of their native languages. So it's important that we can provide tools for users to connect with other users who might not be able to speak the languages that they know. As well as community features, partnerships, and outreach opportunities. We have a lot of different initiatives that we are looking forward to continuing to elevate with the firm hope that we can be the hub of African language learning and translations on a global scale.
Awesome. And for us at Genti Audio, in terms of multilingual literacy, two key things for us. Number one, to curate, right? And for us, this means continue to curate existing content that is education focused in local languages, similar to how I mentioned that there are tons of radio dramas sitting in archives that we've been able to bring onto the Genti Audio platform. There are also a lot of audio content that have been produced for learning, right? Whether it is stories with numeracy themes, right, by several NGOs, educational NGOs that are working in Nigeria and have been working in Nigeria, both local and international. So we have several on our platform and we continue to work to curate more of these. That's the first thing, so that there is a perennial place where people can listen while they are reading along and helping with their multilingual literacy and education. The second thing for us is then related, I guess, is the creator play, right? It's still a form of curation, but it's more collaborating with creators, right? So what do we mean by this? Here, there are a lot of writers, there are a lot of spaces whether writers writing in Pidgin, writing in English, writing in their local languages. There are a lot of writing communities where people are sharing their stories. Genti as a platform is very much diving deeper into our creator portal to support these writers to have an alternative way to reach their audiences through audio. And the powerful thing about it, right, when we think of that relationship between audio and reading, is that people want to, why would you want to learn to, some reasons why people want to learn to read is because they want to have access to more stories that they're hearing, right? And stories drive the need for education. And that's what that collaboration piece with creators is about. Because we can't have everything in audio, but that can be a starting point to engender interest for people who want to then read further. So yeah, that's our pledge to curate, to collaborate with creators. So at this point of the conversation, we've talked about what we're doing. We've talked about the way we're using technology. We've talked about the challenges. We've talked about our pledges for the future. I'm just curious, are there maybe other things that we've not talked about that we should as we wrap up the conversation?
I'm just very excited for the current ecosystem of EdTech in the continent of Africa. There are a lot of incredible things that are happening and a lot of partnerships that are being opened to us. I want to give a special shout out to Co-Creation Hub and the MasterCard Foundation for spearheading this opportunity as well, for investing in companies like ours, the ones that are speaking currently. Their belief in what we're doing is informing so many users of all of our platforms that our languages that we have, our culture is of value. It's important that people like us are the ones that are creating opportunities of language learning as well, that it's coming from people like us is very, very important, because that means that we can protect our languages and educate our people, and our people all over the continent and all over the world. So just a lot of gratitude to Co-Creation Hub and MasterCard Foundation.
I love that and couldn't agree more. I think the just being part of the ecosystem has been so beneficial to us, as well as the mentorship and everything else through the MasterCard Foundation program. But one thing I would say is that if you look at EdTech and the education technology space generally, but especially in Africa today, it is one of the, in my humble opinion, one of the areas that has like the biggest upside and opportunity. Why? Because aside from like all the demographic data and the lack of competition and everything else, you just look at the amount of money that's gone into fintech and climate tech and everything else, and like, yes, now we have seen the Flutterwaves and the Paystacks and everything else of the world coming up, but we're yet to see that in that level of scale, apart from Mandela, perhaps across Africa. But one thing that I've started seeing now that I'm closer to the ground in building a startup is just the amount of incredible traction that startups are getting, the incredible impact that startups are getting. And with that, the fast scale that people are reaching quite quickly, which ultimately points to only one thing, and that's venture-sized returns. And so I think, now that we are seeing the likes of MasterCard Foundation, Acumen Fund, and other guys put money specifically towards EdTech and carving money out towards EdTech and the future of work, I think it's like only a matter of time before we start seeing more African EdTech and African culture unicorns being created.
Hear, hear. So watch this space. And I hope you've enjoyed this conversation with us as well. Thank you, and over and out.